Good morning. Welcome back to Fujitsu Forum TV. We are moments away from this morning's opening keynote, which will be the third keynote of Fujitsu Forum 2019. We're looking forward to hearing from Andreas Ekström. He's a TED speaker, a futurist, and a writer. He's produced the keynote, 7 Ways to Own the World. He's going to be helping us understand all the pitfalls of data and trust, chiming, of course, with the title for Fujitsu Forum 2019, Driving a Trusted Future. I say we're moments away from bringing you the keynote. As with yesterday, you may have picked up on the fact there's 1 or 2 guests here. Unbelievably, we've had guests flying from over 80 countries around the world. Many thousand people are currently upstairs in the auditorium, or should I say queuing to get into the auditorium. So until everyone's seated, we won't flip over to that feed for you. So for the next couple of minutes, whilst everyone is ushered in and told to promptly take a seat, I'm going to get you up to speed on proceedings at Fujitsu Forum, maybe call out some of the interview segments from yesterday that you may have missed and worth going and checking out. So of course, yesterday, the headlines were probably those 2 keynotes, the opening keynote yesterday morning with President Takita, and joined on stage, of course, by Paul Patterson and Rupert Lehner, who are the respective heads for the European regions. They were looking at driving a trusted future and specifically looking at agility ecosystems, the human centricity element around automation, and they were offering a whole lot of insight around what you guys need to know, or what you people need to know when looking at your own strategies. Moving into the afternoon, we had the second keynote, where it was the partners keynote, wasn't it? Executives joining us on stage, executives from Microsoft, Intel, Nutanix, and NetApp. Oh, I remember them all. NetApp, of course, one of our show sponsors on Fujitsu Forum TV, together with Citrix and SUSE. There's a whole load of insight out there on social right now. All you have to do is go and check out our Facebook, Twitter, or YouTube channels. You will see a day and a half's worth of interviews, because we started Media Day, lunchtime Wednesday, and we've pretty much been live top of the hour and half past the hour during business hours since. There's a whole lot of insight looking at the very challenges your business or your society is facing right now. Technology, of course, has the wonderful ability to not just address those challenges, but unlock significant value from them too. This afternoon, as we come off the back of the keynote, we have another packed agenda. We are live through to 4:30 this afternoon. Of course, there's another keynote coming up later today with Dr. Joseph Rieger. If the quantum computing-inspired digital inhaler segment piqued your interest a day and a half ago when we had the brilliant Dr. David Snelling with us, you must tune in and take a look at Dr. Joseph Rieger's keynote. He's elaborating and further evolving on the quantum-inspired digital inhaler story. What's going on here at Forum right now? I believe we have our roaming camera out and about. We, of course, are in the heart of the digital transformation zone. So maybe we can get some pictures from our roving camera showing you what's happening within the digital. In fact, I believe, I'm trying to see where he is now. Oh, there we go. So he's over at the VR stand. This is one of the initiatives that Fujitsu have on show that's helping people understand smart cities of the future, how data can actually be applied to deliver the smart cities. That's one of the virtual reality, one of 3 virtual reality initiatives that have been built here at Forum. I'm told that's not a bed where people were sleeping last night after a heavy customer event. That's actually got tangible reason for being within the demonstration zone. They'll kill me for saying that. Future workspace. It's worth calling out the future workspace. We had 2 or 3 segments yesterday. Lots of people look at the digital transformation element of their technology within the business, but too few are actually looking at the transformation of people right now, and that's the workspace initiative. What's the workspace of the future going to look like? How's that going to affect our people? How do we retain them better, inspire them better, enable them better? There was, of course, some research that came out a day or so ago that further evolves that. If you look over my shoulder on the plasma, you will see the keynote feed. So I believe we're just moments away from that keynote starting. So I think we can go over to the keynote and get you welcome. So ladies and gentlemen, here's your 3rd keynote of Fujitsu Forum 2019. Enjoy.
To welcome to the stage, Andreas Ekström.
Is there a clicker?
Thank you. What?
Is there a clicker for me?
Oh, I'll bring it to you.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. It's not going to be much of a show without this, really. I mean, that's really basic tech, I think. Good morning, everybody. So excited to be back in Germany and with Fujitsu, friends of Fujitsu. Glad to see so many of you here making it up bright and early. You know, day 2 at a conference, it can always be a little challenging to get people going somehow in the morning, but that's why I'm excited to see a full crowded room. Maybe you saved the party for later tonight. Anyway, my name is Andreas Ekström, and I'm here to talk to you about 7 ways to own the world. Now, what may that be? 7 ways to own the world is really just my way to try to frame a few seriously important digital challenges for the next decade. Some of them are larger, some of them are smaller, but I think we need to address them, and I think we need to work them out. You need to know, however, that this is not a typical technical presentation. We're not going to talk so much about tech because, I mean, let's face it, I totally look like a tech guy. Whenever I walk into a room, people assume I'm there to change the toner in the printer. I have no idea why that is, but it's such a common misconception. So I have to tell everybody that my game is the sociology of tech. What happens with us? What happens with people? What happens with society as we're going through an unprecedented period of change in history? That's what I'm looking at. Also, this is not a SWOT analysis, you know, who's going to be winning and losing the future, the winners and the losers and the threats and the opportunities. Not so interested in that. From a reporter perspective, that's my sort of day job, I'm always more interested in another couple of words. And here they are. Who holds the power? And is there a responsibility connected to that power? So power and responsibility, those are the 2 terms we always need to look out for because we've moved a lot of power, a huge power shift to very few hands in Silicon Valley in very little time, for better and for worse. But we've done it. We've done it over 10 to 15 years, and we need to start to look at what does that mean for politics, for life, for business, for all of us as citizens of this planet. So that's also something you need to know. And the final thing before we get going, please also just note that I'm not here to tell you what to do, because I assume that you all already know what you do in the office every day, that you're professionals. Woo. Okay, I didn't hear a roaring yes from Munich this morning, but you know what? I'm going to trust that that's the case, because you wouldn't have gotten here otherwise. Unless you were super interested in what you do, and unless you were passionate about your particular branch of business, your particular challenges, you wouldn't be here. You already know what's asked of you. You know what your clients need. You know what your coworkers expect. You know all these things. You're also painfully aware of where you need to improve. You already know all of that. So I'm not here to tell you how to go about doing your business. That would be silly. I'm going to ask you to do something else. Take all of what you already know. All of what you already know, your clients, your coworkers, all of what's expected of you, all of the challenges that you know lie ahead for you. And look at that with a set of glasses that I'm providing for this short time that we have together. And don't look for a perfect strategy, perfect answers, perfect solutions, but instead, the best questions. Because if you decide to every day look for the best question, you're going to learn more. You're also going to have a lot more fun. And if you settle too hard on finding perfect answers right away, most likely you're just going to be wrong, maybe in an interesting way. But you're going to be wrong. So let's stick to the focus idea of asking a good question. That makes us able to actually learn something that also lasts a little longer than just a little time that we have together. All right, that's my ground rules. Pretty simple, right? Let's do this. 7 ways to own the world. 7 major digital issues that I think we need to think about a lot more. Huge business opportunity, a lot of political opportunity, and some threats there too. And let's figure out what questions we need to be asking to address these issues in a really productive way. All right, here's number 1. First way to own the world is to own our identity. To own our identity. And what do I mean by that? We're going to do this by example, and we're going to take off to Greece, and we're going to pretend that the Greek government today has a meeting in Athens. And what's on the agenda for the guys in Greece today? Well, they're talking about EID. Digital identity. Of course, you need to have a good digital identity solution in place to govern a nation efficiently, of course. So the minister in charge says, we have to really get a grip of this now and really get a good solution in there that really works for everything, your tax authorities, your health authorities, everything. And he says to the Minister of Finance, can I please get some money in next year's budget to do that? Minister of Finance has some other business to attend to. It's a big investment. We can't do that. I'm sorry. I realize we need to do it, but we can't do it right now. We have other more pressing things that we need to work on. Fine. So we have to wait. Okay. We're dropping the subject. Big surprise. The door opens and in walks none less but Mr. Mark Zuckerberg straight out of Facebook. You didn't exactly expect that on a Greek government meeting, but since it's my meeting and I made it up, I get to call the shots. So Mark is moving into this government meeting and he says, oh, okay, so you guys are talking about digital ID. That's interesting. As a matter of fact, we've been talking a lot about that at Facebook too recently, and I have a suggestion for you. How about we give you an eID solution connected to the Facebook account that you can use, super strength, very high security, it's really flawless. And you can use it as an eID solution for all of the nation of Greece. And we can roll that out on Monday. Would you like that? And the Greek government goes, well, yeah, that's just what we were saying, that we totally need to do this, except we can't afford it right now. We can't be buying a system. It's going to be really expensive to implement. And at this point, Mark looks basically offended. Who said anything about buying? It's on the house. I'm paying. One condition though, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to have to ask you to write a law that requires all Greek citizens to register on Facebook. Because otherwise this won't be interesting for me. I say beta test. I need a nation for that. But if you can do that, we can roll this out Monday. What will the Greek government do in a situation like this? I don't know what to advise them to do. I'm not sure. It's not an easy one, but it's easy to giggle if you're in Germany or if you're from Sweden, as I am. And why? Why would we giggle at this and say, that's crazy, we would never do that? I'll tell you why we can do that. It's because we can afford to build another solution that we feel is more ethically appropriate than putting all of our citizens' data over at Facebook. That's why we can giggle a little bit about that. And it's a one-liner, really, for you, coming right up. So please pay attention, because it's my only one-liner, and I've given it its own slide. Here it is. Integrity is a luxury for those who can afford it. Think about that for a second. Integrity is a luxury for those who can afford it. We're all like that. All human beings are like that. You don't see me holding seminars for the Russian mafia. That's because I don't like the Russian mafia. But I have 3 children at home in Lund in Sweden, and if I was unable to feed them, I'd be holding week-long seminars for the Russian mafia. Trust me. German author Bertolt Brecht, he said it best. First the food, and then the ethics. Right? That's the way we're wired to survive in this world, and I don't blame anybody for that. The problem, though, is that when this pattern repeats itself on a nation-state level, and that's exactly where we're at now. Because do you have the integrity to say no to this? It's strictly connected to if you have the money to say no to this. That's what that is. And does that mean that everybody who has money will make a decision that's really loaded with integrity? Think again. I'm going to give you a couple of Swedish examples today. I mean, why otherwise would you bring in a Swedish guy here to put up some IKEA furniture for you? I mean, seriously. We're going to get some Swedish examples. All of you in this room, 100% of you have what we like to call a smartphone on you. 100%, given who you are. That's such a dumb expression. I'm going to need to get some bigger quotation marks, really. Smartphone, come on. It's not like it's loaded with sophisticated AI at this point. I mean, we're getting there, but it's not. Smartphone, honestly, it's sales talk for us to love the damn thing more. It's a connected device. It's wonderful. It's a handheld computer. It's all these great things, but it's not a smartphone. And this might be swearing in church, but while we're at it, there is no cloud. There's just other people's computers. We're putting it in the clouds. Like, no, you're not. You're putting it at the server at Microsoft's basement, which is fine. It might be the best solution for you. There's so many good services that are server-based like that. That might be fine, but it's not a cloud. That's just clouding your thinking. We have to be aware of where language takes us. So on your so-called smartphone, if you are a Swedish citizen, you're very likely to have an app for identification of yourself. It looks different in all European countries. Here's the Swedish one, very popular in Sweden. It looks like this. It's called Bank ID. And this is what we use when we log on to our tax authorities and health authorities and local governments and whatnot, right? The interesting thing about Bank ID, and this looks the same in many countries, this happened the same way in many countries, is that this was originally just a log-on solution for banks. A bunch of banks started this for us to be able to do our bank business online. Okay, fine. But then some genius person at the Bank ID department said, how about we make this open enough to be able to offer it to all of public Sweden and say to all the government authorities, you want to be in on this? So you can have all the citizens just log on to the services through this? And all of public Sweden said, yeah, that sounds really good, let's just do that. And we privatized the issuing of identity for citizens for a whole nation with no debate. That's a major shift in society right there. And it's been done the exact same way in many other countries, not only Sweden. This is very un-Swedish, by the way. We like to own things, together and control them together. I would feel more comfortable. It was like, the tax authorities or the police. I want to renew my passport. I'm going to the police to renew my passport. I like that. I'd be very concerned if they said, no, you can do that over at Thomas Cook Travel, unless they have, gone bankrupt. Oh, but I need to renew my driver's license. Yeah, talk to Volkswagen. They got the franchise this year. Seriously, what's the difference? Why do you privatize the issuing of identity? The only reason why we did it, that I've come up with, is that because it was easy, because the usability factor was so high, we didn't have to worry about it. It works like a charm, it's easy, so we throw all principles aside and we just go for what's usable. With the right usability, if you build software with the right usability, you will get people to sell grandma. No problem at all. Again, Swedish people, we're super weird. I mean, seriously super weird. We love the tax authorities in Sweden. It's been measured. It's like one of the most highly ranked government authorities that we have in Sweden is the tax. We love the IRS. This is very weird. But somehow we have a low level of corruption and people feel that it's okay to pay their share to have some public schools and some roads and whatnot. So for some reason you don't win an election in Sweden on promising tax cuts. We're weird. And the tax authorities understood this. About 10 years ago, 15 years ago, they decided that, okay, so we're going to make it super easy for people to pay their taxes because Swedish people are righteous. They want to do their part. They want to get it right. They don't love to pay in the sense that they want to pay more than they should, but they're fine with not trying to steal away whatever they can. So just make it right and make it easy for me to do it right, and I'll be fine with that. And at this day, you can do all of your tax returns with a text message on your phone. That's pretty amazing. You get a text message one day where it says, we've calculated everything. Does this look about right to you? Yeah, done. If you sit down, go into the printer, take 4 hours and run through all the charts, there might be 300 euros for you to deduct somewhere, but it's a beautiful day. Just put on the barbecue, the girls' team are gonna have a game at 7. Oh, screw it, and we throw 300 euros away in an instant because we have a beer open and a barbecue going, and it's because the usability is right there. I don't have to be worrying about this crap. I'm just gonna press yes and I'm good to go. And if that doesn't prove to you that usability will make people do anything, I don't know what will. That's seriously the reason why we did this too. We just threw this to the banks. This is privately owned. These are privately owned banks. They could be sold to the Cayman Islands tomorrow, and a completely integral part of Swedish digital infrastructure could be gone in 24 hours. There's no backup. This is insane. But it works. And that's why nobody's talking about changing it. What we should do, of course, is to build a worse government solution that's going to be uglier and have downtime like crazy, and people are going to hate it. That's what we should be doing. Vote for me. But of course, we're not going to be doing that anytime soon because it's not broken, or it doesn't seem broken. And I'm going to tell you though why it is. Seriously, all of us in this room are extremely fortunate because we're all the first professional digital generation. All of what we decide to do is going to be, guiding the way for generations to come. We need to make decisions that are not only functioning for 3 months or that work fine now. We need to make the decisions that will hold, that will stand the test of time. People are going to look back at us. And if I may be so bold, I'm even going to say this. We, all of us, right now in this room, are writing a digital constitution. We are the founding fathers and mothers of the internet. We better get it right. And there's plenty of ways for you to make a good buck for the next quarter. There's plenty of ways for you to quick and dirty solutions that will solve a problem temporarily, but that's not enough if you want to be able to look yourself in the mirror when you retire. We're going to have to ask more of ourselves. We're going to have to get it right from a principle standpoint. What's good for society long term? Privatizing ID? No, not so much. We need to rethink this. We need to do some really unpopular, slow, heavy things. It's going to be really hard to convince everybody that that's necessary because this works nicely. Don't let usability stand in the way for a principally solid solution and a decision. Always remember this. Is this good for me, for my company, short term? Yeah, but can I look myself in the mirror when I retire? Did I also do something good for society long term? It's a prime example of how we have to think in both those layers to get it right. So, this is not a local issue, though. This is not obviously a European issue or a Swedish issue. You have to think about this globally. There's about 8 billion people in the world now. We're getting close to 8 billion people. You know, almost 3 billion people have yet to experience the internet. Hard to believe, but true. 3 billion people have yet to come online. But they're going to be online, give it a decade. That's 3 billion new digital citizens, 3 billion new digital customers. That's pretty massive. But that also means that there's plenty of countries in the world that don't have this in place. They're going to need to get this in place. Some are going to have the time and the money and the patience to think hard about this and get it right, make it constitutionally functional for generations to come. But some are going to do the quick and dirty. Somebody's going to come in and say, we'll sponsor it and give it to you for free. Can you imagine the business opportunity in building this? Can you imagine the powerhouse you become if you become the issuer of the digital me globally? If you become the socially trusted, financially trusted, politically trusted way to identify a human being online, can you imagine what a way to own the world? And is there any particular company in the world right now who's excited to try to take that position? I think so. Well, what do you think? Alrighty. There's a second way to own the world. Here it is. It's to own our time. We live in the age of the attention economy, right? The attention economy, kind of a buzzword, but it's true. Our attention is what's worth a lot of money right now. The eyeballs, the amount of seconds that you reach out with somebody, your political message, your product, your service, that's the thing. That's where the money is. And then to understand how this is going to develop, we need to look at what we do online. What have we done historically with our screens, right? Have a look at the year 2001. This is some net usage statistics. The biggest 10 websites on the internet in 2001 accounted for 30% of all web traffic. Kind of a blockbuster internet, a few websites dominated. But it got a lot worse. Look at 2010 here. Now, the biggest 10 websites account for 75% of all web traffic. It's really not that pluralistic, and it's really far away from this. The web, that original, beautiful idea that I fell so madly in love with in 1995. One big network where the one website links to the next in an unhierarchical system. Not big government. Organization, not huge corporations, but many small, intelligent ones, niche humor, niche clubs, niche politics. That was the promise of the internet. Of course, as a young person in 1995, you fell in love with that idea. But we didn't really get that, and we don't really have that. I mean, there's still plenty of niches on the internet, don't get me wrong. It's just that we have all these middlemen that sort of guide our way to what we get to see, all the broadband providers and all the search services, right? But just to remind you of the original feel of the internet, I just picked out a couple of niche websites for you, just to remind you what it used to be like before everything was a Facebook feed. Here's one of my favorite niche websites. HasFeminismGoneTooFar.com. I mean, if you just want to, check politically where you're at. HasFeminismGoneTooFar.com? No. It hasn't. I can tell you that. If it does, I'm pretty sure that the editorial board here is going to change this to a yes, because that's their only delivery promise of content. I feel confident that they got this for me. So that's good. A very niche website. They only do one thing. What else? Every so often, you want to know what it looks like when a guy gets slapped in the face in slow motion by an eel, right? Or at least now you do. Here's eelslap.com. They're market leading. Who else will you go to see a really good eel slap? Very niche website. That's all they do. Market leading in eel slapping. Of course, there's the hip hop tribute that I like at hey.com that links to ho.com and back to hey.com and then to ho.com again. Now that's a programmer who took some responsibility for the silliness of the internet. I'm deeply grateful. Of course, I show you this because it's funny, but I'm also showing it to you to make a point. This is the plethora, the craziness, the low-key, quirky internet that I was hoping that we were going to be building right now. We really aren't. Because of the middlemen. Google, with its market share of 89%, and Facebook, where there's 1 billion individuals logged on at any given moment all the time. 2.2, 2.3 billion accounts now. What do we do there on Facebook? Well, we're logged on 52 minutes per person per day, per average, which is an insane number. We watch about 100 million hours worth of video and upload at least 300 million new images per day just on Facebook. And that's probably even larger now, that number. Just so you get a feel of the niche internet versus the platform internet, right? But in the year of the attention economy, let's just stop here for a second at a lot of still images. Because Facebook, they were never happy with becoming as good as they really thought they should be on publishing pictures online. I mean, they thought, and they correctly 10, 12 years ago, phones, cameras, merging, kids are going to love it. They want to communicate with pictures. We got to be good at that at Facebook. Let's get ready. And of course, the uploads started to take off, and a lot of pictures uploaded. And about 2011, 2012, it kind of started to flat out a little bit. Why? Why didn't it skyrocket? Well, because the kids had discovered this new nifty photo app called Instagram, where people post more or less questionable selfies. Yeah. Now, look back in time. If you were really good at something and somebody else came along and was a competitor to you, what did you do? Well, you'd roll up your sleeves, you work harder, you try to cut the price, you try to get a better product for the end consumer, and that was good for the end consumer. Good old capitalist competition. Usually makes for a better product and a better service. Works like a charm. Except in the age of the attention economy, already in 2012, Facebook has gotten so rich that they don't have to think like that anymore. They're not looking at Instagram going saying, oh my God, they're doing that good. We need to shape up. They're just saying, they're really talented guys over there at Instagram. Let's buy them. Was it expensive? Not really. Not given that that was their revenue in a day and a half at the time. It's a lot of money, yeah, but not for Facebook. It's a steal of a generation to buy Instagram at $1 billion. And if you look further, same year actually, same thing happened with Messenger. People didn't like Messenger so much. They started to use WhatsApp instead. Again, are we going to be as good as WhatsApp? No, let's just buy them. Was it expensive? Yeah, well, I guess you sort of could argue. $19 billion. I'm originally from the west coast of Sweden, Göteborg, Gothenburg, home of Volvo cars. Volvo cars was sold for a 200th of that price to China, early 90s. You can fit 200 Volvo cars into one WhatsApp, and it hurts. But it's the truth. And if you're old enough To have met a company valued at $19 billion, you've learned something about society. You've learned that this is good for society because this means that money will trickle down. People will have a job. People will pay their taxes. And then we can have some healthcare and some roads and a defense system. And that's all going to be great for society. Yeah, that connection is kind of cut though, ladies and gentlemen, because there were about 50 people employed at WhatsApp when they were sold at this price. And if you think one further step away, then you realize that if we're still going to have a defense system and some public schools and healthcare paid by the taxes that we take out on the world, we can't do that if we're just going to be taxing people's work, people's monthly salary. Not if only 50 people have a job, right? You're going to have to move the whole taxation base to the corporate world. You're going to say, if somebody sells a corporation at $19 billion, we're going to take a big chunk out of that to build some roads. You see the need for a complete global tax reform, if you think about it. Only one or two small thought steps away from an acquisition this size in the attention economy. Pretty vast. What does that mean for people? If people don't have a job, do we have to also distribute this as some sort of basic income? I don't know. I'm just telling you that if you're looking for some big questions, reforming the tax systems of the world and the distribution of wealth, and hopefully within 10 years, how's that for one? But we're getting there because the attention economy is creating values at this insane levels, connected from work. Something's got to give there. It's apparent, though, that the attention economy is so incredibly valuable because we like to hang out at Facebook, right? We like to use WhatsApp. Instagram is a favorite of ours. Isn't it convenient, though, that all these three companies are owned and controlled by one man who owns so much shares at this point that he can't be fired even by his own board of directors? 35 years old now, Mark. Congratulations. Isn't it interesting with the respect for age, how that respect goes up as you get older? I'm 44 now, and I think 35 is such a baby. It's weird. All right, third way to own the world is to make money on money. Classic one. Banks, right? Ask the banks. They can look back at internet history. Look at what we did in the 90s. We went to Alta Vista on our Netscape 2.0. We found nothing at all. Really, I mean, we tried to search, but we really didn't find anything. So we would have to go to weird portals instead. Why is this important for banks? I'll show you. So how did the internet develop? Business after business was disrupted. Everything changes for everybody. Very few companies were able to do some seriously and smart research and development. But I'll show you a Swedish example of one who was able to do it the only way that I know that you can. The only way that I know for sure that you can re-evaluate your business. Here's the example of that. Here's the most popular website on the Swedish internet, 1997. It's called Torget, the Square. It looks like an epileptic seizure on a screen. The interesting thing is not the content, though. It's a little bit of everything, right? The interesting thing is, up in the corner, who ran it? Who owned it? The Postal Service. The mailmen. That government-owned, old, dusty operations of delivering envelopes, they did this. Why? I'll tell you why. They had a conference and they asked themselves a really good question. How can we change to remain the same? How can we change to still be a bearer of information for society in the digital revolution? Not so many envelopes, but something else. How can we do that? Here's the brave part. They took 10 of their smartest people, rented an office on the town and said, don't you come back until you have invented something that really could disrupt our core business. Are you ready to do that? Are you ready to take 10 of your smartest colleagues and lots of your profits short term to say, go away, disrupt us? Well, if you don't, somebody else is going to do it. It's not going to be as comfortable. But the Postal Service did. They came back. Can we do something online maybe? Sure, go ahead. They did this and they became #1 on the internet. Started to look really good for about 1.5 years. Until some tight ass on the board of directors said, this is just costing a lot of money. This is not our core business. We're in the core business of putting out envelopes and boxes. That's what we're doing. We're closing this down. And they closed it down. And if I ever meet that bastard, because it's such a sad story, right? I mean, they did everything right in the first step and then everything wrong in the second time. Had they continued, they would have been the Craigslist of Sweden now. They would have been the only go-to place for buying and selling everything. Maybe they even would have been the issuer of digital identity. The Postal Service was government-owned. There's so much they could have been had they just stuck to it. But no, delivering envelopes, doing great now. Oh. Banks learn, though. Banks look back at this. Banks have our conservative sides at working for them. That's their advantage. So banks just sit back, look and learn. That was a good way, but that was not a good way. The record industry, they got their Napster, bad way, try to fight it, in the courtroom, not a good thing. We should have invented it ourselves. Okay, so let's not do it that way. Kids are always going to try to copy stuff, It's like a Commodore 64. I knew it when I was 11 years old. We would copy all of our games. This is my Commodore 64. That box over there is floppy disks full of pirated games. I didn't pay for a single one. They really should have understood, right? I mean, we created an illegal file sharing system without the internet. Empty floppy disks, 5 1/4 inch. You can remove the copy protection with a pair of scissors if you know where to cut. You get on your bicycle and you copy your friend's game and you bring California's gaming industry down. That's how you do it. And then you add the internet to that mix. You think they should have known that they had to come, and we can't fight this in the courtroom. We have to say that we have games that everybody loves. How can we repackage them? That's what they should have done, of course. This picture is pretty recent, by the way. This is my Commodore 64. My daughter's here, Judith and Sigrid, playing international karate. You score 1,000 bonus points if you kick your opponent in the head. Parent of the month for teaching them that. So, what are the banks learning from this? They can just look and see who's done it right over the past 20 years and who haven't. And what the banks have understood is that the future is going to be a future of niche services, not one app where you accidentally can borrow money to buy a house, but an app where you can send money from me to you, like the Swedish version Swish, called Mobile Pay in Denmark, Vips in Norway. There's a solution in every country, right? That's brilliant. Small services for each and every little thing, because they realized if we don't provide a small service like that, somebody else is gonna. So they did it. They don't even pretend it's them. They just call it Swish and put some googly colors on it, and they just don't pretend it's like the Swedish equivalent of Deutsche Bank who does this. It doesn't look it, right? It looks youthful, looks fun. That's brilliant. That's understanding that we need to look like the competition ourselves. They really, really got this right. And people say, everybody, hate their bank. They're going to want to move around it. They're going to use PayPal instead, or they're going to use Bitcoin instead. And I'm not so sure, but the banks have all the money and all the resources, plus our insane conservatism that makes us never make any bold moves with our money ever, just sticking to that old bank because it somehow feels safer. And they can just sit back and just invest there, help us there, be relevant there. And they're just holding on to the simple method of remaining relevant. If we are just around, and this goes for everybody, if we're just around to answer our clients' questions and solve our clients' problems, we're always going to be fine. We have to do it in different ways. New products, new services, different staff maybe, different ways of operating. But let go of the product, let go of that old business model, let go of the office, let go of whatever you need to let go of, but never let go of that. We're answering the questions and we're ready to solve the problems. That's why the banks aren't threatened by this. They'll work with it. Your bank's going to help you to buy Bitcoin if you need to. It's not going to be somebody disrupting them at all. It's just going to be a new way for them to be a service for you. That's why I, contrary to many people who think about the future, think that banks have a pretty great decade coming up. Of course, there's going to be challenges. There's one thing that we haven't seen. We haven't seen anybody come up to the center of a stage and say, everybody step aside. We'd like to be the central bank of the world now. We're just going to be the one digital currency for everybody, and this is where you have everything coming in and going out. Nobody's done that yet. Again, I'm going to have to say, is there anybody who's particularly excited to go try to do that? Well, watch that space. Facebook is trying with their new cryptocurrency, Libra. It's not looking promising so far, but trust me, they want to be that. Because if you can be the center of attention for digital currency, digital transactions, for digital markets of the world, you don't just part own the world, you totally own the world. And people sometimes say that about Amazon. They really want to dominate the market. No. No, they want to be the market. It's different, right? And as soon as somebody wants to dominate something, that's fine. Just compete with them. But if they want to try to replace the rest of the world with themselves, we need to be attentive. Alrighty, so we're moving on here to the fourth way to own the world. And here's it. To decide what we get to see, it's of course always been super important. Filter bubble is something that you've heard about. The news feed, how that works for you. Some people will argue that that's always been the same, right? The 9 o'clock news or your local newspaper, they decide what you get to see. Well, I say, well, not really, because of the scalability and the virality of that news feed, you can't compare it to the old times. Sometimes you just have to let go of the analog parallels. When Facebook decides what we get to see in the algorithm, 2.2 billion people get a different view of the world tomorrow. That's not editing Bild-Zeitung. That's different because of the scalability and the virality. I had to emphasize that by doing it in purple. That's how important that is, the scalability and the virality of it. And we're so dependent on these services, though. We're so dependent on what algorithms decide that we get to see. For example, if you try to post a picture of the Vietnam War, one of the most horrible pictures that you can imagine, a lot of algorithms are going to say that's offensive and take it down. It happened to a Norwegian newspaper who did. But they explained why they had to show this picture. It was the Vietnam War. It changed the view of the world. It's an historic image. We have to show it. But the Facebook algorithm just took it down, saying, oh, no, that's a naked child. We can't have that. Show me the algorithm that can pass a judgment like that. Show me the algorithm that can sensitively argue what is offensive and what is not, what is appropriate and what is not, in what context. This is serious for our views of history. Sometimes it's also funny. This statue of the Little Mermaid in Copenhagen has been taken off the internet 100 times because she doesn't wear a bikini. It's true. We're so dependent on these algorithms to sort what we get to see. And I'm just going to have to say one thing as we figure this out. Google and Facebook and the rest of the gang, you are so incredibly good at organizing the world's information for us that you accidentally became editors of the world. Will you please step forward and talk to us about what principles apply as you edit the world for us? Because you decide what we get to see. If we don't have that conversation, we're not going to get regulation that stops this freedom for us for good. Fifth way to own the world, of course, is to be the link between people, to be the contact constant. This is a quick and easy one. You need to have a phone book, or you need to have some sort of connection for this young lady who moves out and gets a new address, new phone number, gets married, new last name, new email address. All the young generation, though, they don't keep a little black address book anymore, of course, because they trust that you can always find her there on Facebook. Why is that so powerful? What is the thing that really changes everything here? I asked Clay Shirky, who's an internet researcher, about that, and he said, the thing about the digital revolution, like the big thing about the digital revolution is this. Getting organized just got easier, and I totally didn't understand what he was saying, but he said that this is the thing. This is why something can really change the world in a new way. If somebody builds Uber, right, and you have passengers and drivers and cars, and you organize that in a superior way, you're changing the world. When it does that, something happens for real. Dating is the same thing. The old method, going to the pub, ordering a beer, crossing your fingers, so. But now, the most common way to meet somebody is online, because getting organized just got easier. There's an app for that. Falling in love is an organizational problem. It is. Think about it for a second. Spotify, of course, the same thing. They organize the payment to the artist. I just pay the subscription. They solve an organizational problem. Getting organized just get easier. That's the power of it. That's why we're so incredibly stuck at Facebook. That's why everybody has to be there for us to be organized in one place. The end of email addresses, the end of phone numbers. And of course, then something else happens. The sixth way to own the world is to be the place where we talk, where all conversations happen. Edward Snowden then taught us that all conversations happen in one place. You get surveillance, right? Government looking down at the little man, spying. Sure. French researchers suggested that there's another cultural change, though. Surveillance. Sous, the French word for under. So not big brother looking down, but more 10,000 little brothers looking up. What do they mean by that? Well, they mean that the big change is not that society keeps an eye out for the bad guys. That's old news. They mean that the big cultural change that's about to happen, was already happening, is that we watch each other in a gossipy, negative kind of way. Ooh, he shared an article from that website. I didn't realize he was a barking revolutionary madman who wants to kill the king. You know that? That gossipy, crappy stuff that we do? That's a larger cultural change when we become Instagrammable selves. And I'm just wondering sometimes if they might be right. if we're making ourselves so incredibly vulnerable, but also doing all of the looking out ourselves. It may be not so much the government and the companies, it's us who do this, and we shrink the space to be sad and miserable and lonely and hungover. And if we did a single mistake, we painted a graffiti back in 1999, that means you have to resign as Minister of Justice in 2019 because somebody found that in your news feed. Is that the society you want to build, where only people who have perfectly clean track records from age 14 can hold on to any public office? You're 14 years old, can you be Minister of Defense, please? Because you haven't screwed up yet. We're building that society right now by making everything everybody has ever done searchable. Not everybody is proud of everything that they've done in their lives. And if we start to say to a 50-year-old person that you did something questionable when you were 16, you can't hold office now, we're building a horrible society where we ask our public officials to hold a standard that none of us can live up to. This is a technical choice, mind you, not just a cultural choice. It's how we design these tools. We have to make it human to be a digital citizen. It's not at this point, not if everything is searchable. This is why it's so important. Society equals the internet. Internet equals society. It has to correspond. And we're just throwing all these things out there. We're so incredibly transparent. We got a roommate, we got a piercing, we started working, we got glasses, everything, our Instagrammable selves, and we just throw it out there. And I do. I've been thinking about this, and I have good personal reasons to be thinking about this. I'm going to tell you something special. Something happened to me yesterday, right after lunch, when I was going to the airport to come here. I got a phone call from the hospital in Gothenburg, Sweden, where they said, "We're putting you on the list." What list? Can't tell from looking at me, but I'm rather ill. I have an unusual liver condition, and I now officially qualify to get a liver transplant. And if I don't get a new liver within the next year, probably starting December 7th, when they put me technically on the list, I'm going to die. There's no alternative methods. It's an unusual disease. And as you can tell, I'm feeling okay. But that's my reality now. Starting December 7th, I'll have an extra phone. If it rings when I'm on a stage like this, I'm just going to walk out, because that's a signal my life is about to be saved. Now, I've been transparent about this. I have told the world about this. I wrote about it in my book on finding. If you want to catch me in a copy, I'll be up in the VIP area later. There's a segment about that. I've been perfectly transparent to all friends, colleagues on Facebook to try to raise awareness about organ donation, because it's such an interesting digital organizational issue as such, and a human issue that touches me. But the one big takeaway of my observations in the digital world of being in such desperate need to get my life saved is that this transparency of mine, talking about this, hasn't cost me a thing. All I got was support and love, and people saying, "You convinced me, I'm going to register as a donor." It's been all great. But I am Swedish. I live in a society where my health care, including a transplant, is paid for by taxes. Had I been a 19-year-old American man right in between his kid's insurance and his first professional insurance, didn't think twice about it, got the diagnosis I have, put it on Facebook, holy shit, I'm going to have to get a new liver or I'll die, are we sure that he would be properly insured? The US of A is just one example. There are many countries like that. This transparency that we're now experimenting with, our Instagrammable selves, we can't overlook the consequences of that. We don't know. These systems have to be judged not on their best day, but their worst day. It's like nuclear power stations. I like them almost every day, except Chernobyl. That day I was really dead against. We do that to survive, human beings. We compartmentalize, but we have to think about these wonderful, new, fun, social, powerful, politically great tools. We have to look them in the eye and understand what happens on the worst day. A matter of life and death. It's fine for you to form a political party here in Germany. If you do that in another country and that somehow leaks out, yeah, you can be assassinated. It's life and death. And in my case, I was lucky. I was Swedish. My transparency about my liver condition has only done me good. I'm going to be fine. They're gonna usually they do find a liver, so I'm not particularly scared. And I've gotten nothing but great feedback. But will you please today, though, consider registering as an organ donor in your home country? Because if the worst thing happens to you or your family member, you can save 8 other people's lives, 8 other families from that misery, if you just put your mind to putting yourself into that registry. It's beautifully organized now, digitally organized. Thank you so much. Just 1 minute of the 7th way to own the world before I let you go. Here it is. This is my only homework, really, side of the organ, registering as organ donors. Net neutrality is a technical issue in some ways, but it's most of all a democratic issue. I'm going to ask all of you, if you don't feel sure about what net neutrality is, many of you do know that, because given who you are, but many don't. Please, at some point today, read the Wikipedia article about net neutrality. About this long, it's correct. It's the basic principle that says if you provide broadband, you have to allow all traffic equally. You can't sell the traffic depending on who can pay more. The reason why we have it is, of course, that small startups have to have internet access just as the big ones. Otherwise, there would only be big corporations in the world. But also from a democratic standpoint, right? I mean, you have to think about this truly, really. We have an election coming up in the States next year. This is just an example again, but what if Donald Trump's 5 richest friends walk into AT&T and Verizon and Comcast and tell them, you know what, you don't have net neutrality anymore, so I guess we can buy traffic in priority from you guys. And they say, yeah, you can. Well, here's a pile of cash, and we'd like you to always prioritize the traffic to Fox News. And can you also make it really slow to New York Times and CNN, maybe? Sure, it's a matter of money, here's the money. I just don't want to live in that society. And the one thing that can stop us from that is to having net neutrality written into the law. It's really doing great in India and in Brazil and in Sweden. It doesn't even exist in Portugal, and it's really, really about to die in the United States. People think this is a technical issue. I say it's the most pressing democracy issue of our time. And people hear the word net neutrality, oh, that's something technical I don't have to worry about. You are technical people. That means it's your job to know this, understand it, and explain why it's not a technical issue, even though it sounds like it. That's your homework. Without net neutrality, there's no way we can solve the challenges of the future. There's no way we can get this planet in shape, solve all the problems that we have. Free exchange of information and ideas, good new small startup business, a way for us to meet and discuss. It's just going to be taken away if we don't save net neutrality first. Please read up. Please be an advocate for that. I can be wrong about everything I've said today, except that. I'm never, ever going to back down on that one. That's my only activist takeaway. Save net neutrality first, whatever you can, because it's going to be a huge fight over that. So much money to make short term. Stand up against it and save it for the future of the internet, for your business, but also for your nation, for your democracy, for yourselves. Lots of ways to own the world, 7 of them. This is just discussion. This is just a start, ladies and gentlemen. I want you to continue to argue and wrestle with these ideas with yourselves, with your friends at Fujitsu, with me. I'll be upstairs there in the VIP area once again, and I'll be hanging out today. I'd love to take your questions and whatever you may have for me. But for now, let's just enjoy this party, and thank you so much for stepping by to listen to me. Thank you.
Andreas Ekström, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Andreas, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for a wonderful, wonderful speech there. And we also want to say thank you for being so transparent about your living condition. I do
There's
wish you the best of luck.
really no secrets about me of any kind. So. Yeah.
And that's something that I'd love to ask you about, because when you're so transparent and honest with people, do you feel that that actually helps people trust you more?
I'm not sure. Some maybe, but what I do get is that people come to me with personal questions and personal issues when I start. Like if I invest some of that, then I'll get more intelligent questions about digital development if I talk about myself in it. Then again, I myself am not particularly interesting, and I try to avoid all. I want to try to talk about the issues, but I have to also to accept that making it human is the best thing we can do. If many of us are working in the interface between tech and mankind, and if we're going to make the rest of the world who's less technically inclined actually trust the technology to work for us well, and to really, we're going to have to do that. We're going to have to take a responsibility to make humanity get a stronger position in tech than it has today.
Well, I think, as you said, you're connecting on a different level when you're being so personal and so honest with one another. So I think that does create a better bond and a better trusting relationship between the two. And I would ask you, on our theme for this year, which is trust, do you think, or what do you think people can do in order to create a trusted business better?
Well, transparency is the first thing, but don't watch your language is my best advice. If you sell a somewhat more environmentally friendly car than somebody else, it's still not an environmentally friendly car because there are no environmentally friendly cars. There's none. There's not a single car in the world that's good for the environment. Some are less harmful than others. So don't try to bullshit me with product talk like that. Don't call it a smartphone. Don't call it a cloud.
Zero emissions when it takes so many emissions to make the battery.
So many, exactly, yeah. Right? So please don't try to sweet talk me around it because you're only going to win short term. Let's talk about this. It's got its pros and it's got its cons. I might still want to have that product, but I want to be enlightened and I don't want to feel like somebody's trying to trick me. Let's talk about what we're really talking about. That's how you make people trust you.
So how do you think businesses and social goals can be better aligned?
By tech people accepting and inviting the humanities more, by the humanities not being so darn afraid of tech. It's not dangerous. It's not going to, like if I take question sessions like, what kind of robot is going to take my job on Tuesday? That's a pretty defensive question for the future. Like, no, we're programming these things still. We decide. It's up to us. It's a democracy. It's something that we mankind can actually design this. So let's not be worried about that. But we have to make sure that all societary disciplines, if you will, all the sort of skill sets that we have, people who know law and finance and sociology and history and all these things need to work together with the best engineers. That will be sustainable. Otherwise, it won't.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for your answers, and thank you once again for a wonderful keynote this morning.
Thank you. Thanks.
Everybody, put your hands together once again for Andreas Ekström.
Thank you.
Thank you. In just about an hour's time, we're going to be back here on this stage with a keynote from Dr. Joseph Reger. He's going to be discussing this new era of optimization, so hopefully you'll join us then. Bye-bye for now.
Where do you start with that insight? An hour-long keynote packed full of critical observations. I'm sure that's piqued the interest of many of you. If you do have questions for Andreas, obviously use the hashtag Fujitsu Forum TV and we will do our best to pick up with him. Now, because that keynote's run over a little bit, we've had to move the schedule around. The wonders of live TV, this does happen. So the SUSE interview, I was hoping to bring you right now an interview with Gerald Pfeiffer. He's the CTO for EMEA at SUSE, who's going to talk to us about the SAP Enterprise Challenge that many of you are stepping up and addressing. We will bring you that interview, but that will be in 30 minutes time. That will now be at 11:30. We're doing our best to move Andreas to a later slot so that we can talk to him about his keynote and get further observations and insights around the key trust topic. So bear with us. It does mean the agenda that you will see online is slightly out of sync. So, what are we? We're 11 o'clock now. 30 minutes time, we'll be back with our show sponsor, SUSE, talking about the SAP Enterprise landscape. So join us for that. Stick around, there is so much more insight coming your way this afternoon on Fujitsu Forum TV.